The sun rose over the city of Rome, bathing the marble columns of temples and palaces in a golden light. Streets thrived with life, the hum of trade, the clatter of wheels on cobblestones, and the laughter of children filled the air. From humble beginnings on the banks of the river Tiber, Rome had grown into something extraordinary, a city that seemed to touch the heavens themselves. It was the age of glory. Temples rose higher than ever before, their domes and spires carved with intricate details of gods and heroes. Statues of marble, so lifelike that they seemed to breathe under the sunlight, watched over bustling forums and quiet plazas. Every corner of the city told a story, of victory, of ambition, of sacrifice, and of the spirit that refused to be broken. Citizens of Rome moved with pride. Merchants from Carthage sold fine glass and spices. Traders from Egypt brought gold, papyrus, and linen. Artists painted murals of gods and mortals, while architects designed bridges and aqueducts that would carry water to every corner of the city. Roads stretched farther than any had dreamed, connecting Rome to distant provinces, spreading the influence of the Republic across mountains, rivers, and seas. In the Forum, senators debated passionately. Their voices rang across marble halls, echoing in the ears of citizens who gathered to witness the law being made, the Republic in action. Decisions were not easy. Every word carried weight. Every decree could shape the future of millions. And yet Rome thrived. The Republic's strength lay not just in its soldiers, but in its people, their courage, their wisdom, and their relentless drive to build something eternal. One morning, a young sculptor named Elias wandered through the Forum, carrying a slab of marble. His eyes sparkled with inspiration as he observed the grandeur around him. "Brother, do you see the city?" he asked his apprentice, Lucius. "Every stone, every statue, every road tells a story. We are part of something that will last longer than our lives. Longer than any king, longer than any battle." Lucius nodded, awe in his eyes. "I want to carve a statue that the gods themselves would envy." Elias smiled. "Then carve with your heart, and Rome will carry your spirit forward." Rome was not just a city of soldiers and senators. It was a city of dreamers. Artists, poets, philosophers, and engineers all played their part. Every invention, every poem, every architectural marvel strengthened the fabric of the empire. The streets themselves seemed alive with the collective ambition of its people. At the heart of the city, the Colosseum rose like a giant guardian of history yet to come. Its arches reached toward the sky, waiting for crowds that would cheer and gasp at feats of courage and strength. Gladiators trained in the sunlight, their muscles glistening with sweat as they prepared to face not only opponents but the eternal eyes of Rome itself. In one academy, a young general named Marcus studied maps of distant lands. His eyes traced the routes of rivers, mountains, and deserts. He whispered to himself, "One day all these lands will know Rome, not just by fear but by respect, by the glory of our city." Rome's legions marched under the banners of the Republic, their shields polished to a brilliant shine. The citizens who had once been farmers and tradesmen now carried the pride of an empire in their hearts. Soldiers became more than men of war. They were symbols of Rome's strength, discipline, and determination. Every victory, every conquered province, every road and aqueduct they built reinforced the city's reputation as the heart of the world. Yet, the age of glory was not without its challenges. Power brought envy, ambition, and the whisper of betrayal. Senators who had once been heroes in the wars now jostled for influence, their speeches sharp and cunning. Some sought to bend the Republic to their will, dreaming of crowns and titles. But Rome had learned to endure. The city had survived kings, betrayals, and countless wars. It would survive ambition too. One evening, under the glow of the setting sun, Emperor Augustus, the first of a long line of rulers, walked along the marble steps of the Capitol. He looked down at the city, sprawling in all directions, alive with energy and determination. "Rome is more than a city," he said softly to his aide, Gaius. "It is an idea that courage, unity, and vision can create something eternal." We are the guardians of a dream that began centuries ago, and it will last long after we are gone. The aide nodded. And what of the people, sir? Do they truly understand the greatness around them? Augustus smiled. They do not need to understand, Gaius. They live it. Every stone, every road, every temple they build carries the spirit of Rome. That is enough. Trade flourished, bringing wealth and diversity to the city. Markets were filled with treasures from across the Mediterranean, spices, silks, metals, and exotic animals for the grand arenas. Citizens celebrated festivals in honor of the gods, their prayers and chants echoing across the marble columns and domes. Philosophers debated under the shade of the trees, pondering questions of morality, justice, and the nature of power. In the evenings, families gathered to share stories. Children listened wide-eyed as elders recounted the tales of Romulus and Remus, the rise of the Republic, and the victories of the legions. Every story reminded them that Rome was not built overnight, nor was it preserved by chance. It was the result of centuries of courage, sacrifice, and vision. In one small workshop, a young engineer named Decimus worked tirelessly on a new aqueduct design. Water from distant rivers would flow into the heart of the city, nourishing fountains, homes, and gardens. He paused, wiping sweat from his brow, and whispered, "If Rome endures, these waters will flow for centuries, carrying life to generations yet unborn." Rome's glory extended beyond its walls. Envoys and ambassadors from distant lands traveled to the city, awed by its grandeur. Kings, chieftains, and merchants sought alliances and trade, drawn by Rome's reputation not only as a military power but as a center of art, wisdom, and civilization. Scholars studied its libraries, architects marveled at its buildings, and artists sought inspiration from its temples and statues. Yet, for all its wealth and beauty, Rome's true strength remained its people. Soldiers, farmers, craftsmen, and citizens all shared in the city's destiny. Every brick laid, every decree passed, every battle fought reinforced the unity that had been the foundation of the Republic. Rome had become more than a city. It was the heart of the world, beating with life, ambition, and endless possibility. One spring morning, Decimus walked along the Appian Way, the sun glinting off the marble of temples and statues. Children played along the road, merchants shouted over the clatter of carts, and soldiers drilled in the distance. He paused, looking at the horizon, and said aloud, "Rome is eternal. Its glory will outlast all of us." Even as Rome reached its peak, shadows lingered. Ambition, envy, and human weakness always followed greatness. Yet the city had learned to survive, to endure, and to rise above its challenges. From the humble banks of the Tiber to the heights of marble temples, Rome had proven that it could thrive not merely through power, but through unity, vision, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. As night fell, torches flickered along the streets, casting warm light on statues of heroes and gods. Citizens whispered prayers for the city's prosperity, soldiers prepared for future campaigns, and families gathered in their homes. The eternal city pulsed with life, knowledge, and hope. Rome had become a beacon, a city where ambition met wisdom, where courage met discipline, and where dreams became reality. Its name spread across the lands, whispered in awe and admiration. People from distant kingdoms spoke of its grandeur, and even enemies could not ignore its might. For a moment, it seemed that Rome would last forever. Its roads, temples, and statues stood as symbols of human achievement. Its legions defended its borders with unwavering courage. Its people nurtured its culture, arts, and laws. Rome had become the center of power, wisdom, and civilization, a shining jewel in a world often darkened by war and greed. And in that city, under the glow of torchlight and the gaze of marble statues, the dream of two brothers, abandoned and raised by a she-wolf, had grown beyond imagination. Rome was no longer just a city. It was a testament to ambition, vision, and the unyielding spirit of its people. The age of glory had arrived, and though time would bring challenges, betrayals, and invasions, for now, Rome stood tall, proud, and eternal. The beating heart of the world, the city that refused to fall. The sun rose over Rome, painting the marble columns of the Senate with a golden light that seemed almost holy. But inside those halls, shadows moved more powerfully than the sun. Pride had grown alongside the city's glory, and with pride came greed, jealousy, and ambition. The very city that had been built on courage and unity now faced a new enemy: itself. The Senate, once a place of debate for the good of the Republic, became a battlefield of words sharper than any sword. Senators whispered behind closed doors, forging alliances, plotting betrayals, and pursuing their own ambitions. The ideals of the Republic, justice, unity, and the voice of the people, were slowly being drowned in the cries of men who craved power above all else. A young senator, Lucius Valerius, walked nervously through the marble corridors. His heart raced as he overheard whispers of betrayal, promises of bribes, and secret meetings. "Rome is changing," he muttered to himself, his fingers tracing the intricate carvings on the walls. The city that refused to fall might fall from within. In the shadows, two powerful senators, Gaius Marcellus and Quintus Severus, plotted. Their rivalry was no secret. Each had dreams of supremacy, visions of their names carved into history. Yet the price of ambition was heavy, and their rivalry threatened not just themselves, but the very foundations of Rome. "If we control the legions," Gaius whispered, his eyes cold with calculation, "we control Rome. Not the people, not the Republic, but everything." Quintus leaned closer, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "And if we can turn the Senate against each other, Rome will crumble without a single sword drawn. Fear, suspicion, and betrayal will do what war cannot." Outside, the city seemed unaware of the storm brewing within. Citizens went about their lives, children played in the streets, merchants shouted over the bustling markets, and priests tended to their temples. The grandeur of Rome's temples, forums, and statues hid the cracks forming beneath the city's golden surface. Lucius Valerius, troubled by the whispers he had overheard, sought the counsel of an older senator, Marcus Aemilius. The elder's eyes were tired, etched with lines of wisdom and worry. "Marcus," Lucius asked, voice trembling, "can Rome survive this? Can a city built on courage withstand men driven by greed?" Marcus sighed deeply. "Rome has survived kings, wars, and legions, but greed is a different enemy. It spreads like fire, consuming loyalty, trust, and honor. We must be vigilant. We must remind the people and ourselves what Rome truly is." But vigilance was hard to maintain when ambition wore the mask of loyalty. Senators who once pledged to defend the Republic began secretly aligning themselves with powerful generals and wealthy merchants. Bribes changed hands in the dead of night. Letters were intercepted. Rumors spread, and slowly, the city's unity began to fracture. One evening, during a grand feast celebrating a recent victory in Gaul, tensions boiled over. Senators drank wine, laughed, and toasted Rome's greatness. But beneath the laughter, knives of betrayal gleamed. Gaius Marcellus leaned toward Quintus Severus, speaking in a tone only his ally could hear. "Tonight we strike," he murmured. "The next decree will name me consul, and your influence will secure your position. Together we can rule Rome without opposition." Quintus nodded, eyes glinting. "Rome will bend to us, but no one must suspect. Every citizen, every soldier, every ally must remain loyal, or they will be removed." Meanwhile, Lucius watched in horror. He realized that the same ambition that had built Rome now threatened to destroy it. Brothers became enemies, friends turned to spies, and the very halls meant to safeguard justice were now the heart of deceit. "How did it come to this?" Lucius whispered, clutching the railing of the balcony overlooking the forum. "The city that refused to fall might fall from within its own walls." As days passed, the Senate's divisions grew sharper. Debates became shouting matches, and votes were manipulated through fear and bribery. Some senators, sensing danger, formed secret alliances to protect the Republic. Others embraced ambition, believing that Rome's strength would serve their own glory. Outside the walls, the legions remained vigilant, unaware that the battles in the heart of the city were as dangerous as those on the battlefield. Soldiers who had fought together in distant lands now found their commanders influenced by greed and personal gain. Loyalty, once unbreakable, began to waver. One night, under the cold light of the moon, Lucius met with Marcus and a few trusted senators in a hidden chamber beneath the Senate. "We cannot let Rome fall," Marcus said firmly. "The people will follow the path we show them. We must act before the shadows consume the city entirely." Lucius nodded, determination lighting his face. "Then we fight, not with swords, not with armies, but with truth. We remind Rome of who it is, a city of courage, unity, and dreams that began centuries ago." Plans were whispered, letters secretly sent, and loyal citizens rallied. Rome's heart, though threatened, was not yet defeated. The shadows of power would test the city, but the spirit of the Republic remained alive. In the heart of the city, statues of Romulus and Remus seemed to watch silently, a reminder that Rome had always risen from adversity. The she-wolf that had once nurtured the founders became a symbol in stories and murals, a symbol of resilience. And as whispers of betrayal spread, the citizens remembered the lessons of history. Unity, courage, and loyalty were stronger than any ambition. Gaius Marcellus, growing impatient, called a meeting of his allies. Torches flickered against the marble walls as men with greedy eyes plotted the next move. "Rome belongs to us," he hissed. "The people are too weak to resist, the Senate is divided, and the legions follow those with power. Soon, all of Rome will bend to our will." But Quintus Severus, ever cautious, reminded him, "Do not underestimate the people. Do not underestimate Rome. We may control its halls, but its heart, that belongs to all citizens. And the heart can awaken." The warning went unheeded. Pride and ambition blinded Gaius, and soon subtle acts of sabotage began. Loyal senators were discredited, votes were stolen, and even whispers of rebellion were silenced with threats. Yet the city endured. Citizens continued to trade, families celebrated festivals, and soldiers trained along the Appian Way. The beauty of Rome, its temples, forums, and streets, concealed the growing darkness within. For now, shadows lingered in the halls, but they had not yet conquered the light. Lucius, watching from the forum one morning, saw children playing in the fountains, soldiers marching past statues, and citizens carrying on with their lives. His heart swelled with hope. "They do not know the danger," he thought, "but we will protect them. We will remind them that Rome is not built on ambition alone. It is built on courage, unity, and the dreams of generations." As the sun climbed, casting long shadows across the marble streets, the city waited. Shadows of power crept through the Senate halls, whispering of betrayal, ambition, and greed. But Rome had faced darkness before. From the banks of the Tiber to the rise of the Republic, the city had endured kings, enemies, and war. Now it faced a different threat, the human heart itself. Pride and ambition, unchecked, could fracture the strongest foundations. But as long as men like Lucius and Marcus remained, as long as the people remembered the lessons of history, Rome's spirit would endure. And so, the city stood, caught between glory and greed, between light and shadow. The age of glory had shown what Rome could achieve. The shadows of power now tested whether the city could survive its own ambitions. Rome, the eternal city, had grown stronger through courage, unity, and vision. But the price of greatness was high. The Republic that had once risen from humble beginnings now faced the greatest challenge of all, itself. Yet even as betrayal festered in the Senate halls, whispers of hope traveled through the streets. Citizens still believed in the dream of Rome. Soldiers still carried the pride of the Republic in their hearts. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of the city, men and women prepared to defend the heart of Rome, not with ambition, but with loyalty, courage, and love for the city that refused to fall. For the story of Rome was not yet finished. Shadows of power could threaten its unity, but they could never extinguish the spirit that had built the city from nothing. Rome's greatest battles were not always fought with swords. Sometimes, they were fought in hearts, minds, and whispers in marble halls. And as long as courage survived, as long as citizens stood together, the city that refused to fall would endure forever. The sun rose slowly over Rome, but on this day, the light felt colder, harsher. The streets of the Eternal City were unusually quiet, as though the city itself sensed the storm about to descend. Within the marble walls of the Senate, men moved with careful steps, their faces masks of loyalty and deceit. And at the heart of it all, Julius Caesar walked confidently, unaware that his destiny was about to be rewritten in blood. Caesar had conquered lands, won victories, and brought Rome unprecedented power. He had expanded the Republic's reach across the Mediterranean, and his reforms had strengthened the city, providing stability after years of turmoil. Farmers thrived, the economy flourished, and even the legions respected his leadership. He was a man loved by the people, feared by enemies, and admired for his vision. Yet, within the Senate, shadows of ambition festered. Senators who had once fought beside him whispered in hidden corridors. Some resented his growing power. Others feared he would overthrow the Republic itself. And slowly, like a poison in the veins of Rome, betrayal began to take root. On the morning of the Ides of March, Caesar entered the Senate chamber. His cloak draped elegantly over his shoulders, his eyes sharp with intelligence, and his steps confident. Around him, men bowed and murmured greetings, but their words carried hidden daggers. Among them were those he called friends, allies he trusted, men whose loyalty he had once believed unbreakable. "The Republic grows stronger every day," Caesar said, his voice echoing across the marble hall. "We bring peace, stability, and justice. Let no man forget what we have achieved together." A murmur of agreement swept through the chamber, but beneath it, whispers of treachery lingered like smoke in the air. Marcus Brutus, a young senator whom Caesar had mentored as a son, stepped forward. His eyes were heavy with conflict, torn between loyalty and ambition, duty and fear. "It is for Rome," he whispered to himself, trying to steel his resolve. "For the Republic." The conspirators had planned meticulously. Each dagger, each position, each word had been carefully arranged. As Caesar moved toward the Senate floor, he felt a sudden chill, a sense that the day would mark more than history. It would mark the end of an era. "Et tu, Brute?" he would later say in whispers, the words trembling with shock and heartbreak, though in his heart he had sensed the betrayal. As the first dagger struck, a gasp filled the chamber. Caesar's hand instinctively moved to his chest, where crimson bloomed against the white marble. Shock and pain twisted his face. Around him, the senators advanced, each strike precise, unrelenting. The man who had brought peace, who had fought countless battles for Rome, fell under the knives of those he called friends. The hall erupted into chaos. Senators shouted, some in triumph, some in horror. Caesar's blood stained the marble floors, a stark contrast to the brilliance of Rome's architecture. Outside, the citizens of the city, unaware of the betrayal yet, went about their lives, but the very air seemed heavier, darker. Rome's soul had been wounded. Lucius Valerius, who had watched the Senate from the shadows, felt a chill run down his spine. He had feared this moment, yet nothing could have prepared him for the sight of Rome's greatest leader, sprawled and lifeless, betrayed by his own. "Rome, how fragile you are," Lucius whispered, his voice catching in the cold morning air. "How easily ambition can pierce the heart of greatness." The conspirators believed their act would save the Republic. They thought Caesar's death would restore balance, returning power to the Senate and preserving the city's ideals. But they underestimated the power of Caesar's legacy, the loyalty of the people, and the chaos that such an act would unleash. Within hours, the city had erupted. Citizens poured into the streets, angered and grieving. Markets were abandoned as rumors spread like wildfire. Soldiers, loyal to the man who had led them to countless victories, took up arms, uncertain whom to follow. The Republic itself trembled on the edge of collapse. Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal friend and general, addressed the citizens in the forum, his voice ringing with fury and sorrow. "Friends, Romans, countrymen, they have struck down the man who loved the city, who bled for its people. Do you believe this is justice? No, this is betrayal." The crowd erupted, their cries of grief transforming into a roar of anger. Fires ignited, voices clashed, and Rome, the eternal city, shook. The conspirators had believed their actions would bring peace, but they had only unleashed chaos. The city that had grown stronger with each victory, that had thrived under Caesar's guidance, now faced turmoil unlike any before. Brutus, standing among the conspirators, felt a pang of doubt. The people, once silent observers, now moved like a tide, overwhelming and unstoppable. "Did we do the right thing?" he whispered, though the answer was lost in the cries of the city. In the days that followed, Rome became a city of fear and suspicion. The streets, once filled with trade and laughter, echoed with uncertainty. Senators guarded their halls, wary of retaliation. Soldiers demanded leadership and direction, some loyal to Caesar, others hesitant to act without clear orders. The delicate balance of power had been shattered. Yet even in the chaos, the city endured. The memory of Caesar's vision remained alive in the hearts of citizens, soldiers, and loyal senators. Roads continued to connect provinces, temples still stood tall, and the ideals of courage and unity, though threatened, still pulsed in the veins of Rome. In one quiet corner, Lucius Valerius stood by the Tiber, gazing at the river that had witnessed the birth of Rome centuries before. He traced the rippling waters with his eyes, imagining the city's future. "Rome has gained the world," he whispered, "but it has lost its soul. And yet we endure. We survive. We must rise from this shadow, stronger than before." The fall of Caesar was not the end of Rome, but it was a turning point. The city had seen the heights of glory and now faced the depths of betrayal. The Republic was tested, its citizens forced to confront the harsh reality that greatness could be destroyed from within. Soldiers marched through the streets, keeping order and carrying the legacy of Caesar's victories. Senators debated, still clinging to ideals of the Republic, yet aware that power now belonged to those bold enough to seize it. Rome was alive, but fragile, a city on the knife's edge of history. Marcus Antonius, Caesar's trusted ally, began to rally the people, stirring their grief into action. His speeches transformed sorrow into anger, loyalty into defiance. Citizens who had mourned now demanded justice, and the legions, inspired by Caesar's memory, prepared to reclaim order and honor. The conspirators, once confident in their power, now realized the gravity of their act. Rome was no longer a city governed by reason alone. It had become a living storm, fueled by anger, loyalty, and the memory of a man who had bled for its greatness. In the quiet hours before dawn, Lucius reflected on the lessons of the past. Ambition can build Rome, but it can also tear it apart. Power is fleeting, trust is fragile, and even in the darkest hours, the spirit of the city must endure. The eternal city had witnessed kings rise and fall, armies conquer and retreat, and now, a leader who had sought peace was struck down by those he trusted. Yet Rome remained. Its streets, temples, and citizens bore witness to resilience, to a spirit that refused to break. The blood of Caesar had stained its halls, but it had not extinguished its fire. For the first time, citizens and soldiers alike understood the duality of power, that it could protect and destroy, uplift and corrupt. The fall of Caesar was a lesson etched into the very heart of Rome, a reminder that even the greatest visionaries could be vulnerable, and that the city's survival depended not on one man, but on the courage, loyalty, and unity of all who called it home. And so, even as the sun set over the marble columns and cobblestone streets, Rome endured. The empire had gained the world, but at a tremendous cost, it had lost its soul. Yet within that loss, the city found a new strength, a lesson that would guide it through future triumphs, betrayals, and wars. For Rome had been built on courage, forged in unity, and tempered by adversity. It would rise again. The fall of Caesar was tragic, shocking, and cruel, but it did not destroy the eternal city. Rome would survive because it was more than kings, more than leaders, more than ambition. Rome was an idea, a spirit, a legacy, a city that refused to fall.